Hi guys, I'm Kasha. Welcome to our coffee times to talk about horror, and today I bring you my February wrap up.
It's coffee time.
So the month of February was not the best for me because I was traveling and I thought I was going to have more time to read, but then I was so tired at the end of the day that I didn't really have much strength to read. I worked a lot while I was in Spain, spent some time with my parents, and it was not exactly the outcome that I wanted when it comes to reading, but you know what? Life happens. However, it's not like I had only a month where I read 2 or 3 books. I actually managed to read 8 books, and one extra was a DNF. So I could have potentially read 9 things, but one I had to discard because I was really not getting into it. And I rarely DNF books, but this one I just could not get into it at all. So let's talk about the DNF. Let's talk about the 8 things that I did enjoy. If you're new here, welcome to our coffee times. We like to rate here our books with coffee mugs, and I will start with the lowest rating so we end up with the highest, always ending on a positive note. Sadly, the book that I had to DNF is Suddenly a Murder by Lauren Munoz, and this is a YA mystery thriller. I bought this on my Kindle and I was really excited to read it the year that it came out, and I saw it was still on my Kindle and I was like, you know what? It's time to get to it because the premise sounded really interesting. We have a group of teenagers that are going to this house to celebrate kind of like a 1920s party style, and when they're there somebody gets murdered and they have to figure out who it is. So you know, this kind of like locked room murder mystery thing that I enjoy, but I just could not connect at all with the story or with the characters. I started reading this on my Kindle and I realized very quickly that I was confused about the characters. I was not getting to like any of them. I was not getting into the story. I don't know, something about the pacing, the way the characters were introduced, it didn't vibe with me. Then I found that I had the audiobook available to me on BookBeat, so I decided to try the audiobook. You know, I was still trying to give it a fair chance. But I put the audiobook on and I also felt like I could care less about this, so I decided to just call it quits and let the book go. In the month of February, because obviously it's the month of love, I wanted to read a romance and I chose one that it's a new release so that I could talk about it. But unfortunately, this was not exactly what I was expecting. It was not as good as I was expecting. So I ended up finishing it, but it has not been my favorite rom-com at all. It's called Fake It Like You Mean It by Megan Murphy, and it just came out in the month of March this year. And I thought I would enjoy it because I do like fake dating and I do like enemies to lovers, and this kind of has a blend of the two. I mean, honestly, it was cute, it was down to earth, like, I can see why a lot of people will enjoy it, but for me, it was not strong enough. Elle's grandmother, Lovey, has always taken really good care of her, but now Lovey has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's and is getting worse by the day, so now it is turn for Elle to take care of her grandma. She has to move back to her grandma's home until she can find a place where she can put her, you know, some sort of clinic where they can take care of her 24/7, because obviously caring for an Alzheimer's patient is a 24-hour job. She gets into her grandma's house in the middle of the night because everything is delayed. She gets there really late, and when she goes to her room, she finds a stranger in there, and that is the annoying yet handsome guy called Adam. They kind of start off on the wrong foot and they kind of dislike each other from the very beginning in a way, and she has now to live with this guy that she has just met and is very annoying but also really cute. And also at the same time she has to see how her grandma has been deteriorating and she has started to forget a lot of things. She has also forgotten her, and it is a lot to deal with. So this book does have a heavy focus on Alzheimer's, especially in the first half of the book, and how that affects not just the patients but also the family and the people that have to take care of them until they're able to place them in some sort of facility, because obviously, especially Elle, that it is still young, you cannot take care of someone 24/7. This is a forced proximity romance with a lot of humor. It tries to be lighthearted at times, but of course we're speaking here about a very heavy topic. Elle is not happy that Adam is there, but to make things worse, her grandma, Lovey, thinks that Adam and Elle are together. She thinks they're a couple and they have to fake it in front of her. They have to pretend that they're together and they hate it. I think Elle hates it more than Adam, to be honest. This is a very slow burn book, and that's something that doesn't really bother me if I'm really interested in the characters, but I felt like Adam and Elle didn't really have like a lot of chemistry, you know. I didn't like really buy that relationship, and that is a problem when you're reading a rom-com, because if the relationship, the chemistry is not really on point, you cannot connect with the characters as you should. Now, I still think that the characters were good in the sense that they were very down to earth, you know, the things they were talking about, the way they were doing things. It felt like a real person most of the time, so it did give them that edge of, you know, realistic characters in a way, but they just didn't like, you know, they didn't match as a couple for me. I also like that the book, you know, it's kind of telling you to just enjoy the moment because tomorrow is not guaranteed, and the book has a lot of cute moments as well, but unfortunately, it was not exactly a book that worked for me as a romantic story. The next book I would like to talk to you about is Voices in the Snow by Darcy Coates, and if you watched my February reading vlog for Valentine, you probably are sick and tired of hearing about this book because I did go a little bit more into detail on the things that were happening, the things that I enjoyed, and the things that I didn't. After the news report on a very strange kind of climate change, like weather change that is affecting certain parts of the world, our main character decides to drive to her sister's and barricade in her bunker. So Claire sets off to go to her sister Beth, but on the way she wants to pick up her aunt as well because her aunt doesn't have a car and they want to make sure that the whole family can get into the bunker and try to survive until this whole thing is solved, hopefully. Unfortunately for Claire, she has a car crash, and the next thing she remembers after the crash is waking up in a strange room that she doesn't recognize. It is not her sister's house, it is not her aunt's house, so where the hell is she? She wakes up with wounds from the car crash and she meets Doran, a guy that apparently took her from the car wreckage, brought her to his house, and has been tending her wounds. So now she's alone with a strange man in a strange house in the middle of some sort of apocalyptic end of the world scenario. Claire is weak, she's confused, she's a little bit scared, not gonna lie, because she has this man there that she doesn't know if she can trust, and the weather conditions outside are still really bad to the point where she cannot go anywhere at the moment, so they are stuck inside of this house. The book started really strong for me and I was really invested in the characters and the story, but it started to lose steam for me around the halfway mark. Around the 70% mark, we did get some interesting flashbacks, and I was like, okay, we're back into it, and you get to see Claire's lives and decisions before the car crash, and I was like interested to see where we were going with this. But even when we had like action-packed scenes, I felt like I was not caring about the characters enough to be scared for their lives or to root for them even. Like, I just didn't care much for them. Claire was a very bland character for me. I didn't feel like I really got to know her, and she was a little bit boring to me. Now, Doran, on the other hand, had a bit more of depth, and we also got to learn a little bit more about his family and his background, and I think that's what helped to flesh him out a little bit more as a character. But again, they are not really characters that I care too much about. I think the setting is great. The atmospheric, isolated setting in the middle of winter with the snow, the feeling of hopelessness, you know, there are amazing creepy moments in the book as well. But when we got to the ending, it was a little bit disappointing for me, I'm not gonna lie. And I know this is the first book in a series, and somebody has commented on that reading blog and told me that the series gets better and there is more explanations, so I might continue. I just feel like the relationship between Claire and Doran was very weird, and the horror didn't really work for me. I don't want to say exactly what the horror is, but if you read the book, the ending and the kind of end explanation and scenes didn't work for me, which was supposed to be the big, you know, like shock and the big reveal and the big creepy moments, that those didn't work for me. So sadly, I didn't enjoy it as much as I had hoped. But you know, I've read other books by Darcy Coates that I have enjoyed more, so it's still an author that I would read in the future. Next, I read a short story compilation by Samantha Kolesnik. It was called Samantha Kolesnik Lonesome Haunts, and it's part of Tales from Between Presents, which, you know, they pick an author every time and they published a short story compilation by the author, and I was really excited about this one because obviously I really enjoyed True Crime and Wife, both novellas by Samantha Kolesnik. Now this compilation is still as depressing, sad, disturbing and messed up as her other novellas that I have read, but it didn't have the same impact. I would say this is less extreme horror than her other ones, so I feel like that is why I was slightly underwhelmed by the stories. I think I just needed more extreme because it's what I was used to by her. My favorite stories were actually the two first ones that are Another Me, Another Time and Wild Appetites. So those were my two favorite ones, but I would still recommend it to you guys if you enjoy her other novellas, or if you've never read Samantha Kolesnik before. I would say these are less extreme than her two other novellas that I have mentioned. Moving on to a new release that I read, and that is Wake Up and Open Your Eyes by Clay McLeod Chapman. So after I DNF'd Suddenly a Murder, I checked on my audiobook account to see which other new releases I had there that I could pick from, and I saw they had this one, and I'm like, I'm doing it because I felt like this book would work better for me as an audiobook after struggling a little bit with Ghost Eaters by the author. This book was unique. This book was weird, and that might be an understatement because this book was truly wild. The book follows Noah, who is a liberal husband, and he lives in New York. He doesn't speak to his parents or his brother or his family much at all, and he doesn't have, you know, he has like a strange relationship with them, right? But then one day his mom starts texting her and leaving him messages talking about the Great Awakening, and he starts to get, you know, creeped out about these messages, and he doesn't understand why. Obviously they have very different views on politics and all of these things, and he just tries to ignore it. But then he realizes one day that he has not heard from his parents for a very long time. He tries to call them, they don't pick up, and he starts to get really worried and decides to drive to his parents' house. Now when he gets there, he realizes that everything feels like it has been abandoned. Everything's dirty. He goes through the kitchen, everything is moldy, and he finds his parents staring into the void, into the TV, and he starts to try to figure out what's going on with them. But his parents are not going to be the only ones that have been affected by this kind of virus that is spreading quickly in the country. The novel is obviously targeting propaganda media and how these divides families and also, you know, political views, all of those things, ends up dividing people that love each other. It's clear to see that the author here has a very strong opinion and he's not afraid of sharing it, and you know, I applaud that. Just share your opinion, and if somebody doesn't like it, well, it is what it is. Even if you don't agree with his view, I think the story was quite captivating and quite interesting. The mixed media aspect of the book also makes it even more entertaining because there is a point in the book where they start showing you videos, like video footage from different parts of the country, of the world, different people that have been affected by the virus or know somebody that has been affected by the virus, or a video from when the virus strikes. Like, it's very engaging and it makes it a little bit more dynamic to be changing, you know, back and forth the POVs. The world is being attacked basically by a mind virus that is turning humans into their more primitive state. Basically, they're very violent and they don't know why. They just turn like cuckoo crazy and they fight against each other and all of that, and you get to see that also through some of that video footage that I was talking about. I would understand why this book is not going to be for everybody, and I'm also not the biggest fan of politics, so I'm really glad that I listened to this as an audiobook because I don't know if I would have really enjoyed the experience as a physical book. I think the audiobook helped me to get through the novel a little bit quicker, but the message here is very clear. Be very careful of the things that you read and you see online because not everything is true. Another book that I read during the month in February is a book that I got an arc for when it came out and has also been waiting patiently for me to pick it up. And that is That Night in the Woods by Christopher Triana. So I'm really glad that I finally picked it up. Now, after I read it and I saw some people's reviews, I saw that a lot of people were saying that this was less messed up and less disturbed than his other books. So now I'm even more intrigued for those. People say this was less extreme horror than his other books, but it focused a little bit more on humanity and humans and their relationships. And I would agree to that because a lot of this book is the relationship between a group of friends and how things that happened to them when they were kids have affected them also as adults. The book starts very slow and it follows a group of friends that are all reuniting in their hometown after one of his friends from when they were kids, when they were teens, passes away, and that is Steve. So they all reunite and they all are surprised to see each other again because they never saw each other after one fateful night when they were, I think, around 13 years old. Something happened to them and they had not had any contact at all until now, years later. Now they're back in their hometown and they are back to those woods where they once went in when they were teens, and something truly horrible happened that night. As the reader, you don't know exactly yet what happened to them, but you are obviously waiting for them to start telling you the juicy beats. And once they reunite, the story of what happened to them is told through letters in a diary, and you get to experience what happened to them that night. So the book does jump back and forth between that night when they were teens and the present as they are reading through the diary and the letters to try to understand what actually happened to them, because a lot of them had suppressed those memories because they were obviously traumatizing, so it's not something you want to remember all the time. And they are starting to discover also new details and things that they didn't know about that night. The book is divided in different parts, and I think the author knows really well how to navigate through the horror tropes and create suspense, tension, and a disturbing story. I have to admit that I was more invested in the first half than the second half. I kind of was waiting in the second half for that big punch in the gut, and that didn't really happen. But I really enjoy the characters and their story and, trying to piece together with them what happened that night, and I'm definitely gonna be picking up more books by the author. I would say this is a book that is between The Blair Witch Project and It. It has elements from both of those things. Next, we're going to talk about The House That Jack Built by Dale Robertson. I picked this one up because this is another book that was on my Kindle for a long time, and I was trying to read more things on my Kindle because I was traveling, and honestly I really enjoyed this book. In this small town, everybody knows about the legend of Old Man Jack, and they all know that if you go to his old place that it's now abandoned, you might never come out again. This house is seen as a dare for kids at school, and they dare each other to go in. Sometimes the kids that come out, they come out change, and like I said, other times they don't come out at all. Now, Tom, Seb, and Regan, three friends, are determined to get into the house and find out what's the truth. Is this spirit of this guy still there? Is he killing kids? What's the deal? Is it all a myth? So they want to go in there and finally, know the truth. I mean, sometimes it's better not to know these things than to go into a house that is rumored to be haunted. Just saying. Apart from the main story that follows these three kids going into the house, each of the kids tells a horror story, and I thought that was so cool to have. Like, you have a main story, but then you have three small stories also that are very different and very gruesome. It's really cool, that the kids each tell a story because they are inside of the house. It makes it even creepier, and they hope that by telling these stories and doing some sort of rituals that they think they have to do, that Old Man Jack is going to show himself. This is the type of story I would recommend people to read during Halloween because it is fast-paced, it's entertaining, you get three short stories in the middle as well, and I think it's the perfect creepy story for Halloween. So if you wanted to pick up one for that month, this might be a good choice. It's also fairly short. I think it's under 200 pages, so it's also easy to add to your TBR pile in October. It's a unique take on the haunted house story, the typical haunted house that takes children, or that children are scared to go into because they think a witch lives there or a spirit. And I really enjoyed the resolution. I really enjoyed the three separate stories as well, so I do recommend to pick up this one. Now we go to a mystery thriller that also came out in the month of March. I have been really trying to read some of the arcs that I have on my Kindle, and that is A Serial Killer Support Group. It is by Saratoga Scheffer, and I was really excited to get into this book because the premise sounded just so good, and honestly, I had a great time with it. It was not perfect, but I would still recommend it to people that enjoy true crime. Sierra's sister was brutally murdered, and apparently she was murdered by a serial killer. This is what the police believes, but police investigation is not really moving forward, and Sierra's starting to get really annoyed, and she wants to find out what happened to her sister, and above all, she wants revenge. So she hears about a support group for serial killers that meet locally, and they talk about the things they've done, but everything is anonymous. They don't talk about their real names or anything like that, but they do meet in person. So she tries really hard to get into this group of, you know, support for serial killers, because she thinks if she can get in there and talk to them, even though of course they are not giving away personal information, she might be able to figure out who from these serial killers potentially kill her sister. It's not very smart or very safe to be in a room full of serial killers talking about how they've killed this and that person, but you know, sometimes in life you gotta do what you gotta do. As our main character continues her investigation, things are gonna get dark very fast. You also get some chapters from the point of view of the serial killers that attend this group, which make the book a little bit more entertaining because you also get to learn about their own personal experiences, modus operandi when it comes to killing and all of that. I think this book has a unique take, you know, on the mystery thriller because it brings it almost like to the true crime aspect. And I also did enjoy that our main character was not exactly black and white. She was not good, she was not evil, she was somewhere in between. She was kind of a little bit of a dislikable character sometimes, and I still enjoy those characters. I know some people don't, but they do work for me. Now this is a work of fiction, so you might have to suspend disbelief sometimes, not gonna lie, but that's like almost in every horror and mystery thriller book. Let's be honest here. But I think for people that love crime and investigations, this might be a really good pick. The pacing could have been a little bit better, but I really did enjoy the ending specifically because it got so disturbing, it got so dark, and I was there for it. And last but not least, we have my new favorite book, and I'm talking about Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. This caught me by surprise, not gonna lie. I was expecting to enjoy it because the other two books I have read by the author I have really enjoyed. I was just not expecting to fall in love with it so hard, like so hard. I'm gonna get a physical copy because obviously I want it for my personal library. I want to reread it at some point. There's many quotes in this book that I love that I would like to put somewhere because I love them. And I think the whole take on werewolves was so original, and it was just so realistic in a way, which is weird to say because obviously it's fiction. And I know this book is not gonna be for everybody because it does have romance in it and it is a big aspect of the book. And that is also why I chose to read this one during February, also during my Valentine's reading vlog. So let's talk about the book. The story follows Rory, who is forced to move back to her hometown because her sister is heavily pregnant and the baby daddy is not in the picture anymore, so the sister needs help. She's not really happy, Rory, to move back to her hometown because she never really liked to be there, but she would do anything for her sister. She goes out one night to the town bar and she sees a guy that used to be a guy that was in love with her actually when they were kids, and she never found him interesting until now, because now he's a grown-up, he's an adult, and he looks tasty to her. She is like, I could do him now. Anyway, that night on her way back home, driving in her car from the bar, she has a car crash. She hits something with the car, has an accident, goes out because she's like, oh my god, I might have hit a deer or some animal, I'm gonna go check if they're fine. But apparently something else happens in those woods that night, in the middle of them, and she gets bitten by some animal. And obviously, because you know what this book is about, you already assume that she was bitten by a werewolf, so you already know something's gonna change in her. What I really appreciated about this book was that the author was showing and not telling. We were not getting like a full-on explanation of what happened to her that night, a full-on explanation of what's going on with her. We were just seeing behaviors and little changes in her that were allowing us to see the transformation. So she started having nightmares and sweating in her sleep. Food smelled really bad to her, like regular food. The wounds that she had were getting really nasty and weird. She was also able to smell things from very far away. So you're kind of like, small changes in her body, small changes in her that are allowing you to see as a reader that she's starting to turn. This book addresses the changes that women go through in life, you know, when you become a woman, when you get your period, when you get pregnant, postpartum, hormonal imbalances. You also have menopause. Those are all things that we go through, and it changes our bodies, and sometimes you feel like you're not yourself inside of your own skin, of your own body. And it talks a little bit about all of that and how it's not really talked about enough, and how sometimes it's really hard to learn to love yourself through all of those changes. It explores sisterhood, vulnerability, childhood trauma, but it also uplifts you. It also has many beautiful quotes about just learning to love yourself the way that you are, the way your body is. You know, just accept the changes and learn to live with them instead of being miserable about them. Now, the horror in this book can be intense, and it's not just the more gory werewolf transformation that she goes through physically, but there's a lot of talk about her childhood trauma and why she's traumatized, and that can be a big, huge content warning for people. So just putting it out there, because I don't see many people talking about that on the reviews, and I don't want to say exactly what it is in case it's a spoiler. But if anybody wants to know, you can always DM me, I will let you know. I really love Rory as a character. I fell in love with her. I thought that she was taking things very well considering what was happening to her, and trying to juggle becoming a werewolf and also a love relationship, plus your heavily pregnant sister, your mother. Like, she was going through a lot. The poor girl was going through a lot, and I think she managed everything very well. From the writing, the pacing, the characters, the agonizing transformation scenes, like, this book was perfect to me, which doesn't happen often, but I don't think I can criticize anything about this book that I would have wanted to be done differently. Sometimes we don't feel like ourselves in our own skin, and that is okay. You are not alone. And these, you guys, were the 8 books and the 1 DNF that I had in the month of February. I hope that you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on the books. Let me know down below if you've read any kind of horror romance books in the month of February. And if not, just let me know which was your favorite read that you read in February 2025. Thank you guys, as always, so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in our next coffee time. Bye!